Hello everyone, and welcome to the English Teacher's Guide to the brand new EDEXCEL GCSE English Literature paper. Today we're focusing on paper 2, and more importantly we're focusing on how to plan a perfect response for question A for section A. Now, the structure of the exam. Paper 2 is worth 50% of your GCSE Lit paper, overall grade. It's a 2 hour and 15 minute paper. There's two sections. Section A is the novel from the 19th century, and there are two questions, one based on extract, the other a whole essay, and we're focusing on the extract today. And section B is based on poetry. One question is about your anthology, the other question being an unseen. Both are comparison questions. Okay, so as a task for you to see if you've been revising, what does the mark scheme say you need to include in order to achieve 20 out of 20 for this question? And then secondly, what method should you use in order to accomplish perfect marks? So pause this now, note down or revise how you're supposed to do that before moving on. Okay, so here's the mark scheme. This is purely based on AO2, so that's your understanding of language, form and structure. So to get perfect marks, you have to make sure your response has a cohesive evaluation of the interrelationship of language, form and structure and their effect on the reader. So to summarise that, a cohesive evaluation means you need to really be thinking about why the writer has structured the work in the way they have, which is very different from the old papers which ask you just to analyse what words meant and things like that. Now you have to be evaluative all the time. You also need to make sure you're looking at language, form and structure to a perceptive high level, and then you have to make sure you are also using relevant subject terminology throughout your work in an integrated way, rather than saying things like this is a metaphor. Simply change it to the metaphor quote does this. In terms of your planning, so it's about 10 minutes to plan, 15 minutes writing response. Your timings will change depending on whether, well, when you've practiced, you'll know how long you should spend on each part. But to plan, you need to read the question carefully, making sure to underline the key parts of it. It's really important to understand exactly what you need to do. Read through the extract, making sure to underline anything that you feel might be of use in your analysis. Now you can start coming up with your points. It's essentially PE. So write down 3 or more ideas which answer the question. Select your best 3, and obviously these are your points. These points could be either examples of theme raised or points which explore how the writer may use language, form and structure, for instance. Now, also, once you've done that, go back to the extract and locate at least one piece of evidence to prove each point is correct. And remember, you must make sure you explore structure and form as well as language. And then once you've done that, you need to start making notes for analysis. Okay, so how does this prove my point? How does this quote prove my point? How does this use of structure prove my point? Once you've done that, you've then got yourself a plan, which all you need to do is then write it out in full sentences. So, let's also look at our answering. There's no need for an introduction here, although you may wish to evaluate the writer's reasons for presenting the focus of the question in the way they have. So, what did I want the audience to think? How does this extract influence you? That's the evaluative part you can hear. Then, as I mentioned already, it's your PE paragraphs, and there's your PE structure. You might do PPE, you might do PEA, doesn't matter. Essentially, you're writing an analytical essay paragraph, making sure you cover those things. A point, evidence, your basic explanation, has that quite basically proved my point, but then you're also exploring the importance of individual words. You're also looking at the way structure supports your point. You're also looking in terms of views. You're also looking at the way in which form proves your point. Now, you might not use all of them every single time, but overall, in your 3 to 4 points, you want to make sure you've covered all of them. Again, if you're using a theme-based point rather than they use structure in this way, language and form in this way, you're kind of limiting yourself by doing that. Saying that the extract presents is destructive, now all of a sudden you can use all 3. Again, remember you must use terminology, then proofread your work carefully. So let's have a look at a question, shall we? Explore how Dickens presents Pip's thoughts and feelings about Joe and Mrs. Joe in this extract. Give examples to support your ideas. Now again, this is obviously based on Dickens, but this method could be used on any of the questions. So let's have a look, shall we? So here's our extract. I'm not going to read it out to you because there's absolutely no point in doing that. You can do it at your leisure. Now you can see what I've done here is I've got my points, my evidence is underlined and highlighted. Now point 1, known for being a disciplinarian. So obviously I'm talking about Mrs. Joe here. You can see my quotations, hard, and then my analysis proves that she's uncaring or painful. Great, somewhat ironic. Tickler, ironic as it causes pain rather than pleasure. And again, you can see here Joe is a weaker character, also more caring. So I've got a couple of ideas there again. Fair, lighter in comparison to the stern. Lists the positive aspects, and as my structure. Smooth creates a more relaxed character. So I'm using the contrast between the two. And then my third point, again, I've got my evidence highlighted once more, as you can see. So a tough figure, a nutmegger. She's resilient and can handle the harsh nature of the world she lives in. A coarse apron reflects a coarse, abrasive personality, and that is form. You can see I've read through the extract carefully. I've got my quotes highlighted, made my points, got my evidence, got my notes for analysis, and I had to make sure I do that in full sentences. Okay, so thank you very much. Keep on revising, and obviously feel free to make sure you look at our next video, which is how the answer should look to ensure perfect marks. Well done.